been a great partnership with Verus because, again, if you think about the situation a lot of our joint customers are in, they spend money in digital advertising, they spend money in offline media, they make money through digital conversion, they make money through offline conversions, through contact center retail stores. Piecing together all the elements that you need to drive and orchestrate that buyer journey is very complicated. And so that's where we're very fortunate to share a number of joint customers with Verisk, where you can look at, how do I connect an individual person in the digital world, right? Like we think about people and individuals in the digital world with a household and a household construct in the offline world. And how do I put together the data sets around those two things to best understand the journey, to understand what people are interested in buying, to inform what's the best solution for me to offer them. And so it's been really fun to work with the Verisk team because we can kind of couple Verisk data with online journey buyer data to really help deliver both more efficient marketing and that great personal touch in a sales or service perspective. And so it's been a lot of fun. I always love working with partners where we have joint customers and we can go attack problems together. And so it's been a lot of fun to work, Tim, with you and the rest of the Verisk team on how we better serve those customers.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Rapport.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport. I'm your host, Tim Finnegan, and I lead product marketing at Verisk Marketing Solutions, where we partner with our clients to create more personalized experiences and drive profitable growth strategies with data and insights. In this episode, I talk with Gregg Johnson, CEO of Invoca, to discuss the evolving landscape of consumer decision-making and the complexities of the customer journey. Gregg highlights the challenges faced by companies selling intricate products such as insurance, where the buying process involves both digital and offline channels. Gregg then emphasizes the importance of aligning sales and marketing teams to create a seamless experience for consumers, as these teams often have conflicting metrics and objectives. He then went on to share insights on how technology like that from Invoca helps bridge the gap by providing data-driven insights that improve both digital and human interactions. And finally, we discussed the collaboration between Invoca and Verisk, which allows for a more integrated understanding of consumer behavior across digital and offline platforms, with an outcome of the potential for enhanced marketing efficiency and consumer experiences. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Gregg as much as I did. Hey, Gregg, welcome to the podcast. The reason why I wanted to have you specifically on the podcast today is I really want to dive into your expertise around the customer journey, specifically sort of that unifying online and offline buyer journeys, ultimately to drive revenue. But before we get into my hard-hitting questions, I just want to sort of have you level set with everybody, talk about a little bit about your journey to being CEO of Invoca and what you do over at Invoca.
Great. Well, Tim, first of all, thanks to you and the Verisk team for having me. It's always fun to talk shop with people that think about the geeky world of marketing and revenue and all those sort of things. So just for background, I've been at Invoca as CEO. I actually hit my 8-year anniversary yesterday. And so I joined in late 2016. Company was about 100 people, about 15 million in revenue. We're over 100 million in revenue, about 350 people today. And my background, I would say, has been in and around front office customer engagement software for a long time. I spent 9 years at Salesforce before coming to Invoca. I did work at BCG before that for clients like Microsoft, Intuit, and others. So I've had the opportunity to work in the CRM, digital marketing, contact center, CDP, all of those spaces, which I'm a person who loves an intellectual challenge, who loves keeping up with new and fast moving things. And This space is a pretty fast moving one these days, Tim. So it's been fun to keep up.
I know people think sort of, if you just do a blanket term data, that it's this old thing. It's like, it's constantly moving and changing. And that's why we're lucky to get what
keeps us young and fresh and on our toes.
So actually, for everyone listening, Gregg and I go back a few years. Gregg was nice enough to jump on stage with me at one of our customer conferences called VIA. And Gregg, you said a couple things that I remember to this day that I want you to go over maybe a little more detail. And it was around consumers having to make complicated decisions and how that impacts the customer journey.
Yeah. So just for a little background on what we do and the types of customers that we support, typically organizations like Invoca and Verisk, we're working with companies that sell relatively complicated, sometimes expensive products and services. And so what that means, I'll sort of compare and contrast to make it straightforward. If you think about a company that might be in kind of the retail space, fast shopping, things around clothing or stuff like that, increasingly where they drive awareness and engagement and demand is almost entirely digital. It's, through digital platforms like Instagram or TikTok, and people buy through e-commerce. And so you have this very data-driven end-to-end journey that certainly is complicated to manage, but happens almost entirely online. And so you have very clean, very well-structured data to how you orchestrate that buying decision. Whereas for Verisk and Invoca, we work with customers that, for example, might be in property and casualty insurance or health insurance, or, for example, one of the great customers we enjoy doing work with is DirecTV, Renewal by Andersen, and others. And these are organizations that drive interest and demand through digital advertising and digital marketing, so platforms like Google and Meta and their website, through offline media, TV, direct mail, things like that. And then they drive some of their conversions, some online through e-commerce checkout or online scheduling of someone to come out to your house and from Renewal by Andersen and look at getting you some new windows, or they do it through contact centers or retail locations. And so the buyer journey, I like to say, raises the degree of difficulty because we're in an Olympic year. Simone Biles, the Simone Biles of digital marketing and digital advertising are the types of customers that we serve. But they have a very high degree of difficulty because they're having to stitch together, how much money do I invest in digital advertising? How much do I invest in the web? How much do I invest in offline media? And then how do I understand the impact that has on digital conversions like e-commerce, offline conversions through my contact center or my retail store? So orchestrating, measuring, and optimizing that buying journey, not to mention the full customer journey, is just a higher level of a degree of difficulty, which makes it harder to get a 10 out of 10 score. And so that's where partners like Verisk and Invoca come in to really help you think about measuring, orchestrating, optimizing all those different paths to purchase.
So if we were doing the Olympic bingo card, I would already have 3 X's done, and I didn't even think the Olympic theme was coming through.
I didn't either, and I'm not a gymnast by background. So if I get any of them wrong, Tim, you or the audience are welcome to correct me.
So, Gregg, lately I've had a bunch of guests about measurement. So people from Nielsen, Adelaide, Innovid, and it's all the CTV and measurement. But I like what you say about the concept of this human touch and how it makes it much more difficult to measure where the human to human experience to drive that revenue. How do you talk about that or balance that with customers? What everyone's talking about digital, but yet you're talking about combining human experience and digital.
It's a very interesting topic because I'll give you an example. One of our customers is Four Seasons, and I was actually just in Denver this past week meeting with the woman who leads the media team at Four Seasons. And as a media person, she wants to measure everything. She wants to have a very granular understanding of what is going on throughout their business. But as a very smart marketer who understands the value of her brand, she knows that Four Seasons is a luxury brand where they not only want to bring a great digital experience, but the human touch that you get through a Four Seasons experience is a differentiating part of their brand value proposition. And so I think the challenge that a lot of marketers have had in the past is First of all, organizations needed to go through a lot of transformation to enable more digital self-service, to build a mobile app 10 years ago to enable those types of experiences. And that's great because that's a really important baseline to have. But then there was almost this inherent bias because you couldn't measure human touch. You couldn't understand human touch. It was a qualitative thing in a world of measurement and optimization, which is a very quantitative thing. And so I think one of the areas that, technology has opened up over the past 5, 6, 7 years that we lean really heavily into is, can we help a brand deliver that same level of human touch that makes for a great experience while also measuring that journey and those interactions in the same way that you can with digital. And so then what I like to say with customers is, the brands that we serve, they can offer their consumers choice. How much do you want to engage in digital? How much do you want to engage through human touch in the contact center world? How much do you want to engage in human touch through retail? You can let the consumer decide, and you can use the data to refine the path and improve the path. You can understand, if someone is deep in an application flow for health insurance product, and then they reach out to speak to one of your agents, is that because they need reassurance because they're buying a Medicare Advantage product for the very first time and they want confidence they're getting the right product? Or is it because there's an error or an opportunity for improvement on your website? And those are two different reasons to have a conversation with an agent. One is very valuable to you as a brand. The other one is a feedback loop on how you could serve the customer better in the digital world. And so I think what's been nice is companies that value human touch, they had to fly blind from a data perspective. And what has happened recently with advances in technology is you can measure human touch like you can measure the digital experience. And so now you can really optimize between the two. What do your customers prefer? Your consumers prefer? What's most cost efficient for you? What's going to deliver the right conversion? You can really bring that 1-2 punch together and use it in a deliberate, orchestrated way.
And I like how you say that, because you talk about, it's not squishy things like, oh, there is human experience, but you're actually combining it and you're measuring it.
Measure it. Yep.
Recently, you were in wrote an article in Fast Company, which I really enjoyed. Before I get to that, you did mention about improving data. When you say that, are you talking about like enriching the data with like behavioral attributes, or are you providing, because I know you guys provide data in real time to improve the human experience. Just can you clarify when you talk about improving the data?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way that I think about that is to give a very concrete example. Traditionally, if you go back 5 or 10 years, for customers who aren't using technology like ours or data like you can get from Bears today, you run an ad campaign. I'll just stick with the Medicare Advantage example. You're running an ad campaign, helping educate people on what types of products they may need to ensure they have the health services they want as they get older in life. And if you drove an application online, you could measure that. If you drove people to have a conversation with an agent, you really lost the data trail in the buying journey between, where did a consumer find your product and service? What did they research on the website? And then understanding where they actually spoke to an agent. Did they complete an application? That feedback loop. So Invoca is all about helping connect that digital journey into a human touch point, and then bringing the data from a partner like Verisk to better understand, what types of products and services may be most relevant for that individual. How do you get a more complete view of them as a potential customer? So it's really about piecing those multiple data points together to ensure that you can deliver the right service, but also to give that feedback loop to marketing so that you can make the smartest choices as a marketer, how to continue to drive demand in the most cost efficient way for your company.
You bring up a very valid point, but there's a lot to unpack there, because back to that Fast Company article you wrote, it was about pursuing growth in an era of less and getting sales and marketing teams on the same page. What you just said maybe is a little difficult. Like, it would be great to say all these things or have this, but how do we get those teams and strategy aligned to sort of achieve what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's really interesting because most of the businesses that we serve are consumer brands. And in the business to business world, The idea of having your sales teams and your marketing teams very aligned has been a discussion for years and years. This is not new. In the consumer world, it's still, I would say, relatively new concept, because if you go to an organization that is a big consumer brand in health insurance or property and casualty insurance or telecom, you'll typically have a team that owns digital advertising. So it's like a media team, digital advertising, offline advertising. They're very disconnected from the team that actually drives the sales and service delivery for the consumer. Their common boss is the CEO. So they don't have bosses in common farther down the organizational chain to drive alignment. You'll have a marketing team that actually looks at how many conversations are we driving with our sales agents as a measure of success, a measure of progress, a measure of victory. And then oftentimes you have contact center executives that look at how can we actually have less calls and less conversations with our customers. So they have sort of conflicting mindsets. And so one of the things that we end up doing a lot at Invoca is not only providing the technology and the data that helps those teams talk about buyer journeys in a consistent way with more consistent KPIs or metrics, but I would say oftentimes with our customers, our teams end up playing sort of an organizational therapist role, helping make sure that the marketing team and the contact center sales team are aligned on what they're trying to do. For example, if you're about to go launch, a massive offline media like TV and search program or campaign, have you informed the contact center team so that they staff up the number of agents they have? Because otherwise you're going to drive all this demand into a brick wall of people staying on hold for 5 minutes because they can't get to a live agent. So looking at things like the correlations between when you're running offline and digital marketing campaigns, the staffing in your contact center, the follow-up strategies of whether, someone who's typically in market for one of these products for 45 or 60 days, if they have a conversation with an agent, what can you learn from that conversation in an automated way to inform your digital advertising, your digital marketing, so that when you reach out to them with an offer or promotion, you're doing something that's relevant. It's kind of the equivalent of, everybody knows how to do an abandoned cart campaign. You take the product people were looking at and you put it back in front of them. And maybe you offer a promotion, maybe you don't, but you sort of re-portray the product they're considering. If I talk to a contact center agent about a product and you want to re-engage me, you probably got to give me more information about that product as opposed to one of the other 50 that your company offers. And so thinking about how you bring together that orchestration is an act of data, it's an act of technology, but I would say most importantly, it's an act of organizational collaboration and alignment that needs to happen that oftentimes is pretty rare in companies this big.
So when you talk about helping your customers, sort of being the therapist for their sales and marketing team,
I would never say it directly to a customer, but
I know. Well, no one, don't worry, no one listens to this anyways. I want to go into your conference that you had last week that I attended, but it reminded me of you had someone from the Aspen Dental Group, one of your customers, talk about, and they were so excited to tell you that they got the call center out of finance and over into marketing because of what you said. They have to align, because if you are downsizing here, the marketing needs to know to generate less or more leads and all that. But that conference that you had was really good, and it was about driving. Your theme was revenue growth. Can you just share a little bit about what you talked about in sort of your opening statements?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about 3 themes. One, sales and marketing alignment, and the idea at Aspen of, traditionally the contact center was focused on finance and operational metrics, and the organizational evolution that has happened is having a conversation between marketing and the contact center team in that operational world around the metrics that marketing thinks about, and marketing thinking about, hey, when we drive inbound interest to schedule an appointment, that's a good thing. And, the contact center broadening, I would say, their perspective from a finance and operational kind of definition and alignment around metrics to think about marketing metrics as well. So sales and marketing alignment was one. I mean, Tim, what topic have you talked about with every digital marketer on your podcast for the last 18 months? Talking about artificial intelligence and how, companies are the different ways they're applying AI to better understand the buyer journey, to better drive marketing efficiency. And then finally, an area that we're investing a lot in and is really interesting is around consumer privacy. And obviously, I actually think one of the challenges that we've seen in the market is there's been so much discussion around the death of third-party cookies and third-party cookie deprecation that there are some other things going on that are almost as important in your business, especially as a digital marketer. That's kind of third-party cookie deprecation has overshadowed some of those things. And so looking at, not only the regulatory changes, but for me, one of the interesting things is, Apple has really leaned into privacy as a differentiator around what they're doing. And they're educating the market, right? When California came up with the CCPA, the California state government did not come up with an ad budget to educate consumers in California and beyond about what CCPA meant. Apple is putting ad budget. They're putting up billboards. They're putting up TV ads. At that event, we showed, if you haven't seen it, the Apple ad that's kind of inspired by the birds around people watching your browsing activity. Apple is educating the market. And so I think as a marketer, you need to understand that reality. We had our friends from Telium talking a little bit around how you drive trust in your consumer relationships. But how do you, as a marketer, privacy-proof your go-to-market motion and ensure that you're doing all the things to build a trusted relationship with customers while also being as data-driven as you can, and how you drive revenue for your company?
Yeah, AI has been brought up once or twice on this podcast.
Once or twice.
Once or twice. But you did say something, you said a lot that was very interesting, but specifically on cookies, and this is good timing because the next podcast, which is coming out in 2 weeks, I interviewed two of our internal subject matter experts, Russ Schultz, who sort of drives that digital product, and then Christine Froelich, who's our VP of product. We decided to do a cookies podcast, but we wanted to wait. And now the sort of the theme is, so what does this really mean for marketers? I think that's what we need. We can't just react really quick to something. Let's think about it and let's react. But back to how you and I originally met in VIA, I do want to tell the story about how marketing can help. I was doing my research on Gregg Johnson. I found this video of you doing this funny marketing video of like this NASCAR theme where, I don't know, can you just explain it real quick before I give away the punchline? What was this video about?
So first of all, shout out to Ian Daly, who a great marketer that came up with this idea. We were doing a launch around marketing and sales alignment as we were introducing a product, an AI-powered product that we had for consumer contact center sales. And it was oriented around how do you drive performance with data? And we had an awesome speaker, whose name I can't recall at the moment, who is a NASCAR driver, Stanford alumni, go Card. And she had studied either computer science or engineering at Stanford and really aggressively was a pioneer in using data to improve her driving. And so we did this whole theme, and Ian came in my house. We recorded a video about my passion for NASCAR and the fact that I grew up in Atlanta and, the hotbed between Georgia up in Alabama to North Carolina where NASCAR is invented, and all about my passion for NASCAR and all these other sort of things. And with that, I will hand it to Tim to complete.
So I watched this video, and I started off my career in sales. And the first thing you have to do is you need to find something in common with the person, that just so we can bond over something. And I bring up that I love NASCAR, which I don't know a ton about it. So I'm doing all this research so I can drop some names. And Greg, you say what?
I don't even like NASCAR. That was all an act.
It was all an act. It was all an act.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, you're not alone. And I do this too, right? Like anytime I'm going to meet somebody, I want to understand their background. I want to understand to be have interest in common. And so I have had bankers, lawyers, podcast hosts, investors, everybody that you could imagine say, hey, I really appreciate your passion for NASCAR. I've never been to a NASCAR race. I don't think I've ever watched a NASCAR race on TV. I can't name more than 3 or 4 NASCAR drivers, but one of my beliefs in my 8 years as a CEO is leaders have to be willing to embarrass themselves. And so our marketing team teed up an opportunity for me to embarrass myself. You go search Gregg Johnson NASCAR on YouTube. I bet you can find your way to this video. Hopefully it'll make you laugh. Definitely memorable because I've had lots of people talk to me about it. But yes, that was an act of marketing. That was not an act of revealing my own deep and personal interests and hobbies.
Well, speaking about being a great leader, I'm going to give everyone a little insight into Gregg Johnson. Every Friday, you share a video with your whole team about the state And last Friday, you did one up in the bleachers at Wrigley Field with your hair blowing around. And you're like, Tim, here, come take a look at this. And all I felt like you were just bragging about your great head of hair because I'm follically challenged. So I'm going to forgive you on that one. But hey, before I let you go, could you just touch a little bit about how Verisk and Invoca work together to bring solutions to market?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great partnership with Verisk because, again, if you think about the situation a lot of our joint customers are in, they spend money in digital advertising, they spend money in offline media, they make money through digital conversion, they make money through offline conversions, through contact center retail stores. Piecing together all the elements that you need to drive and orchestrate that buyer journey is very complicated. And so that's where we're very fortunate to share a number of joint customers with Verisk, where you can look at, how do I connect an individual person in the digital world, right? Like we think about people and individuals in the digital world with a household and a household construct in the offline world. And how do I put together the data sets around those two things to best understand the journey, to understand what people are interested in buying, to inform what's the best solution for me to offer them. And so it's been really fun to work with the Verisk team because we can kind of couple Verisk data with online journey buyer data to really help deliver both more efficient marketing and that great personal touch in a sales or service perspective. And so it's been a lot of fun. I always love working with partners where we have joint customers and we can go attack problems together. And so it's been a lot of fun to work, Tim, with you and the rest of the Verisk team on how we better serve those customers.
Thanks, Gregg, and a huge thank you for joining the podcast. I know you've got other things to do, like run a company and speak at conferences and speak to customers. So thanks for taking some time, and I had a great time. Thanks, Gregg.
Well, the next time we do it, we'll do it live from Wrigley Field. We'll just pick a day where there's no wind.
Gregg, I asked you to be on the podcast. You're like, yes, but I have a great idea. Let's do it at Wrigley Field. I'm like, I don't know if I'm prepared to do that, but okay, we'll try. All right. Thanks, Gregg. Have a good one.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Report. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Report wherever you get your podcasts. And check out the show notes for more information.